I disguised myself as a useless beta and snuck into the Wolf King's territory. When he caught my scent, instead of sending me to the gallows, he dragged me straight into his bed. "This scent on you," his fangs pressed against the back of my neck, his voice so low it seemed to grind out from the very depths of his chest, "shouldn't even exist in this world." It was snowing, the first snow of the year, when I was dragged into the Silvermane court. By tribal law, any outsider who steps into the Wolf King's territory without permission, regardless of status, is executed. And I didn't even count as an outsider. I was just a stray mutt who had been wandering for 3 years, a boy who had even lost his last name, an insignificant beta. "Kneel," the guard escorting me kicked the back of my knees. I fell to the ground. My knees slammed against the icy stone slabs, the pain making me gasp, but I didn't dare make a sound. In a place like this, showing weakness was just as lethal as showing strength. Sitting on the high throne at the end of the grand hall was the Wolf King of the Silvermane tribe, Samuel Van Helsing. I had only heard his name in rumors. They said he inherited the throne at 23, annexed 7 minor tribes in the north within 3 years, and sent every elder who dared question his bloodline to the grave. They said he had golden eyes, and when he looked at someone, it was like looking at a piece of meat that could be discarded at any moment. The rumors were not exaggerated. He did have golden eyes, and right now those eyes were fixed on me. "A beta?" he spoke, his voice devoid of emotion. "A beta, trespassing into my territory alone. Are you here to die or to deliver a message?" I kept my head down, forcing my voice to sound hoarse and timid. "Your Majesty, I just got lost. I don't know anything. I haven't seen anything. Please, let me go." This was the script I had practiced countless times. I shrank myself down to look as inconspicuous as possible, like a frightened rat that could be stomped to death at any second. The greatest advantage of being a worthless beta was that no one would ever look twice. Samuel stood up and walked down from his throne, step by step. With every step he took, my heart beat faster. I kept my head down, staring at the silver buckles on his boots, repeatedly telling myself, "Steady. Your pheromone suppressants are still working. You're just a beta. You're just a worthless nobody." He stopped in front of me. Then he crouched down. One hand gripped my chin, forcing me to look up. I met those golden eyes. Up close, there were fragmented, flowing specks of gold in his eyes, like molten metal. He stared at me, the sides of his nose twitching imperceptibly. Then, he completely froze. I could feel the fingers gripping my chin tighten in that instant, almost crushing my bones. He was smelling me. My heart skipped a beat. Suppressants. The suppressants should still be working. I had taken my last pill 3 days ago. The effect should last for at least another 2 days. I shouldn't have any scent. I was a beta. I was. "What are you?" His voice changed. It was no longer that careless, casually lethal calmness. It was something forcibly suppressed, something almost trembling. I'm a beta." I heard my own voice shaking. "No." He leaned in, the tip of his nose almost pressing against the side of my neck, and took a deep, slow breath. The entire grand hall was so quiet you could hear the snow falling on the window lattices. The guards and elders stood frozen in place, no one daring to move. They had noticed it too. Their king was not in his right state of mind. Samuel's Adam's apple bobbed. He lifted his head, his golden eyes locked onto me, his pupils contracting into dangerous, thin slits. "Male," he enunciated every word, as if confirming the impossible. "Omega." The entire hall erupted. "Impossible!" A white-bearded elder stood up abruptly. "Your Majesty, male omegas do not exist. That's a myth of tainted blood, an ominous curse. It absolutely—" "Shut up." Samuel didn't even look back, simply tossing out 2 words. The elder immediately fell silent. My blood ran cold. It was over. I had disguised myself as a beta for 16 whole years, and no one had ever seen through it. I took the lowest quality suppressants to completely mask my scent, thinking I could live like this for the rest of my life. A worthless nobody that no one cared about, peacefully rotting away in some forgotten corner. But this man had only taken 1 sniff. "Take him away." Samuel stood up, his voice returning to that terrifying calmness. "Lock him in the tower next to my bedchamber. No one is allowed near." "Your Majesty," the elder said anxiously, "by law, trespassers must be executed. Furthermore, this person's identity is unknown. If he really is that kind of thing, he should be put to death immediately to prevent tainting the pure bloodline." Samuel turned his head. He merely gave the elder a single look. There was no anger in that look, only a careless, casually lethal chill. The elder's words caught in his throat. "I said." Samuel paused after each word. "Take him away." No one dared to utter another sound. I was hauled up by 2 guards and dragged out. As I passed by Samuel, I heard him whisper in a voice so light that only the 2 of us could hear. "Did you think you hid it well?" My entire body stiffened. "Little stray kitten," he let out a low chuckle, a sound holding something I couldn't decipher. "I smelled your scent the very first second you stepped through those doors." The room in the tower was better than I imagined. There was a bed, a roaring fireplace, and even a window overlooking the entire snowfield. It was better than any place I had slept in for the past 3 years, but I couldn't feel happy at all. I had been targeted by a ruthless wolf king who didn't blink when killing, and my deepest secret had been seen through at a glance. No matter how comfortable this place was, it was still just a cage where I awaited death. My name is Carlyle. It's a name I gave myself. I don't remember who my biological parents are. My earliest memory was from when I was 7, in a convent on the border that took in abandoned children. The nuns told me I was found in a basket left at their doorstep. I had nothing but a swaddling cloth and an old silver pendant engraved with strange patterns. When I was 9, I went into heat for the first time. It was a disaster. I was burning up, the back of my neck itching, and my body emitting a sweet, cloying scent that was foreign even to me. All the alphas in the convent rushed toward me like madmen. The nuns locked me in the cellar, where I curled up in the dark for 3 whole days. Later, a nun gave me medicine. "Carlyle." She shoved an entire bottle of suppressants into my hand, her eyes full of fear and pity. "Remember, from today on, you are a beta. You cannot have a scent. You cannot let anyone know what you are. Male omegas get burned at the stake, do you understand?" I didn't understand back then, but I did as I was told. I took suppressants for 16 years. I forcefully suppressed myself from an omega who exuded sweet pheromones into a scentless, worthless beta. I learned to walk with my shoulders hunched, to speak timidly, and to lower my head before anyone's gaze swept over me. I lived like a shadow, and now this shadow had been pierced by a pair of golden eyes. When the door was pushed open, I was sitting on the edge of the bed in a daze. Samuel walked in. He had changed out of the complex royal robes he wore in the grand hall, donning only a black shirt. The sleeves were casually rolled up to his elbows, revealing a fierce, old scar on his forearm. He was a full head taller than me. Just by standing there, the air in the entire room seemed to grow heavy. "What's your name?" he asked. I pursed my lips and didn't speak. He didn't get angry. He walked straight up to me and looked down at me. "I can smell your fear," he said. "And I can smell other things too." I snapped my head up. "What do you want?" "According to tribal law," he said slowly, "you should die 3 times. Once for trespassing, once for faking your identity. And as for what you are..." He paused, his golden eyes narrowing. "Just your existence alone is enough to have you burned at the stake once." My heart sank inch by inch. "But I didn't kill you." He leaned over, planting one hand on the wall behind me, casting me entirely in his shadow. "Aren't you curious why?" He was too close. I could smell his scent, a biting, sharp alpha pheromone like a mix of cedar and rust, domineering and dangerous, yet inexplicably making the back of my neck tingle. "Because?" I struggled to speak. "Because I'm useful to you?" He smiled. "Smart," he said, "but not entirely correct." He raised his other hand, his fingertips landing on the back of my neck, right on that exact spot, the spot where an omega is marked. All the blood in my body rushed to my head in that instant. I wanted to dodge, but I couldn't move. I was firmly pinned in place by his gaze and presence. His fingertips were scorching hot, slowly, almost gently caressing the skin on the back of my neck. "I've lived for 26 years. His voice dropped low, brushing against my ear. "I've never smelled a scent like this. The tribe says male omegas don't exist, that they are a curse, a tainted bloodline." His fingers tightened. "But the way you smell," he practically gritted out the words, "is as if you were born specifically for me." He didn't touch me that night. He lingered at the back of my neck for a long time, so long that I thought he was going to bite down in the next second. Rumor had it that when an alpha marked an omega, they would pierce the scent gland with their fangs and inject their pheromones, binding that omega to them forever. But ultimately, he just let go and walked away. When he reached the door, he paused. "Tomorrow," he said with his back to me, "someone will bring food and hot water. Tell the guards if you need anything." "And then what?" I asked. "And then?" He turned his head, his golden eyes flashing in the firelight. "And then you stay here obediently. Until I figure out what to do with you, you're not going anywhere." The door closed. I collapsed onto the bed, completely drained of strength. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying the feeling of his fingertips against my neck, recalling the supremely suppressed tone in his voice when he said, "As if you were born specifically for me." I should have been terrified, but a corner of my heart that I refused to acknowledge rippled with a faint, dangerous flutter at those words. The next day, Samuel didn't come. The third day, he didn't come either. On the evening of the third day, my suppressants failed completely. I was woken up by my own scent. That sweet, cloying pheromone that felt alien even to me seeped out of my skin, filling the entire room. My neck burned, my body went soft, and I curled up on the bed, biting down hard on my own wrist to stop myself from crying out. It was my heat, a heat that had been forcefully suppressed for 16 years. Once it broke free, it came with a vengeance. I could hear a commotion among the guards outside. Someone cursed under their breath. Someone pounded heavily on the door. What the hell is that smell inside? God, is that omega pheromones? But isn't he a beta? "Don't go in," the king said. "No one is allowed near." But this scent, I can't take it. Curled up in the corner of the bed, I realized with despair that my scent was going to drive every alpha in this tower insane. They would bust in, they would tear me apart, they would... Bang! The door was kicked open. It wasn't the guards. It was Samuel. He strode in, kicked away a guard who tried to follow him, slammed the door shut, and locked it. The entire room was instantly filled with his pheromones. The scent of cedar and rust fiercely overpowered my sweet, out-of-control aura. In that instant, my body miraculously relaxed. "You!" He looked at me trembling in the corner of the bed, and his eyes completely changed in that second. His golden pupils contracted sharply. His Adam's apple bobbed, his chest heaving violently. I saw the veins bulging on his clenched fists, as if he was desperately trying to hold something back. "Your suppressants." His voice was unbearably hoarse. "When did you run out?" "Today," I said weakly. "The last pill." He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something I had never seen before churned in those golden depths: lust, restraint, and an agonizing struggle. "Carlyle." He walked toward me step by step. I froze for a second. "How do you know my name?" I checked. He stopped by the bed, looking down at me. "The convent orphan, the silver pendant, the patterns. I know everything about you." He reached out, his fingertips brushing against my feverish cheek. Instinctively, like a startled cat, I nuzzled into his palm. An omega in heat craves an alpha, its pure instinct. I couldn't control it. He froze completely. "Don't look at me like that," he gritted his teeth. "And don't lean into me like this." "Why?" I asked, dazed. "Because I'm at my limit." His voice carried a dangerous rasp. "Carlyle, do you have any idea that all I can think about right now is pinning you to this bed, biting your neck open, and marking you as mine forever?" I shivered all over. Then I looked at him, my eyes clouded with a watery haze unique to heat. "Then why don't you?" he cursed under his breath. Then he leaned down and scooped me up from the corner of the bed into his arms. He held me in his arms, but he didn't take it any further. He simply wrapped me in his pheromones, using that biting, domineering aura to slowly suppress the churning heat inside my body. His chin rested on the top of my head, his breathing heavy and restrained. This feeling of being soothed by alpha pheromones was something I was experiencing for the first time in 16 years. It was like rain, finally falling on parched earth. I clutched his shirt tightly, burying my face in his chest, greedily absorbing that sliver of peace. "Why?" After a long time, when my mind had cleared a bit, I asked in a hoarse voice, "You could have marked me. Why didn't you?" He was silent for a long time. "Because I can't mark you," he finally said. I looked up. 3 days from now. He looked at the snow outside the window, his golden eyes devoid of warmth. "I am to marry an Omega from the Eldridge family, the oldest noble house in the north. A political marriage. Every elder in the tribe has their eyes on this wedding. It's the final puzzle piece to consolidate my throne." My heart grew cold inch by inch. "And you?" He looked down at me, his gaze complex. "You are a male Omega. Under tribal law, your very existence is a capital offense. If the Wolf King mates with a male Omega, it would be seen as tainting the pure blood, despised by the entire tribe, and it would spark a rebellion." "I understand." I pushed him away, struggling out of his embrace. "You mean I'm not worthy, Carlyle? You don't need to explain." I turned my back, curling up on the other side of the bed. "I've known since I was 7 that I wasn't worthy of anything. I'm used to it." The room was quiet for a long time, so long that I thought he had left. Then I felt the mattress dip. He enveloped me from behind, wrapping me entirely in his arms, his chin resting against the back of my neck, right on the spot to be marked. I could feel his fangs hovering dangerously close to my skin. "It's not that you aren't worthy," he whispered in my ear, his voice carrying a gentleness I had never heard before. "It's that this world isn't ready yet." His fangs gently brushed against the scent gland on my neck. I shivered all over, but in the end, he stopped. That night, he held me, hovering on the maddening edge of marking me for the entire night. For the next 3 days, Samuel came every night. He never appeared during the day. By day, he was the ruthless wolf king of the Silvermane tribe, handling state affairs, receiving the eldritch envoys, and maintaining the facade of a king preparing to wed a noble Omega in front of all the elders. But every night, he would push open the door to my tower room. He brought me new suppressants, a much better, royal-grade medicine. He said that until he figured out a solution, I had to suppress my scent so no one else would detect it again. "You're protecting me," I said suddenly one night, watching him add firewood to the hearth. "I'm protecting myself," he replied without turning around. "If your scent leaks, you won't be the only one to die." "Liar," I said. He paused. I hugged him from behind. I was no longer that hunched, cowardly, trembling, worthless Beta. In front of him, I felt like I could be Carlyle again. A person with a name, a person who had the right to live boldly. "Samuel," I pressed my face against his back. "Why didn't you just kill me? On the first day in the Grand Hall, you absolutely could have. A worthless Beta, a male Omega who shouldn't exist. No one would have said a word for me." He didn't answer. "Was it because of that scent?" I pressed. "You said, as if you were born specifically for me." He finally turned around. The firelight danced on his face, softening his golden eyes. "Carlyle," he said, "when I first presented as an alpha at 12, the tribe's high priest divined my fate. He said that in my life I would meet someone who shouldn't exist. That person would be my tribulation and also my destiny." He raised his hand, cupping my cheek. "I thought it was just the priest's nonsense," he said, "until you stepped into my hall, until I smelled your scent. My heart raced. I didn't kill you that day." He leaned down, resting his forehead against mine, "because my instincts were screaming. They told me that if I killed you, I would regret it for the rest of my life. So," I looked up at him, "are you willing to break the rules for me?" He was silent. "Samuel." I stood on my tiptoes, my nose brushing his jaw. "Just once. Mark me just once." He closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing violently. "No," his voice was hoarse. "Once I bite down, it can never be hidden again. The entire tribe will smell my scent on you, and then what awaits you won't be my bed, but the stake. I'm not afraid. I am." He snapped his eyes open, gripping my shoulders tightly. "Listen to me, Carlyle. Until I have the power to protect you, I will never mark you. I won't let you die. Even if I have to marry that eldritch Omega, even if I have to pretend I don't know you in front of everyone, I have to keep you alive first." Seeing the churning agony and absolute resolve in his eyes, I was suddenly speechless. That night, he held me again, lingering on the edge of a mark all night long. His fangs touched the back of my neck over and over again, only to pull back forcefully every single time. I could feel his tremors with every act of restraint. That was the first time I realized that restraint could be 10,000 times more agonizing than indulgence. On the day of the wedding, the Silvermane court was adorned with festive decorations. I was locked in the tower, Through the window, I watched the courtyard below covered in white petals symbolizing pure blood and the Eldridge family's grand procession rolling into the court. The Omega who was to marry Samuel was named Seraphina. I caught a glimpse of her from afar. She was indeed stunningly beautiful blonde, blue-eyed, carrying herself with noble grace. The perfect candidate for Wolf Queen in everyone's eyes. Her pheromones, even from this distance, smelled of a noble, comforting rose. And me? I was a monster hiding in a tower, relying on suppressants to survive, unacknowledged by any law. I watched Samuel, dressed in silver-white royal robes, take Seraphina's hand and walk up the altar that symbolized eternal union. I watched him make his vows to that woman, witnessed by all the elders and tribespeople. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant hand, suffocating me. I knew this would happen. From the first day he told me about the political marriage, I knew. But knowing it was one thing, watching it with my own eyes was another. I turned around, putting my back to the window, and curled up in the corner of the bed. I told myself not to cry. Carlisle, you've had nothing since you were 7. You're used to having nothing. What difference does one Samuel make? But the tears fell anyway, betraying me. When darkness fell, the door opened. Thinking it was a guard bringing food, I didn't turn around, until a pair of arms wrapped tightly around me from behind, until that familiar scent of cedar and rust enveloped me. Samuel? I whipped my head around. Your wedding. It's over. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice muffled. The ceremony is done. But what? He lifted his head, a look I couldn't decipher in his golden eyes, a mix of pain and a near liberating relief. But I didn't mark her, he said. I made it clear to her. This marriage is purely political. We take what we need. She wants the status of Wolf Queen and the protection of the Silvermane tribe. I want the Eldridge family's support. There will be no marking, no mating between us. I was stunned. Why? I asked. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. Because the place for my mark, he whispered softly against my ear, can only be saved for you. My tears welled up all over again. But you can't mark me, I choked out. You said it yourself, the stake. I will find a way. He cupped my face, kissing away my tears one by one. Carlisle, give me some time. I will find a way to make the entire tribe accept you. Even if I have to tear up this 1,000-year-old law with my own hands and rewrite it. You can't do that. I shook my head. You are the Wolf King, but you still have to abide by tribal law, a male Omega. The entire tribe won't tolerate it. Then I will change the entire tribe, he interrupted, his tone firmer than ever before. I annexed 7 northern tribes in 3 years. I silenced every elder who ever questioned me. Do you really think I can't protect you? He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss exactly on the marking spot on the back of my neck. Just wait for me, he said. When I have everything ready, I will mark you openly and honorably in front of the whole tribe and make you my Wolf Queen. Leaning against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, I allowed myself to believe it just a little bit for the very first time. Even if that belief seemed like an impossible dream at the time, Samuel secretly began investigating my origins. He said that to make the tribe accept a male Omega, his absolute power wasn't enough. He needed a legitimate, irrefutable reason. Carlisle, he asked me one night, do you still have that silver pendant? I pulled out the old silver pendant that had been with me for 16 years from my inner pocket. It was the only thing connecting me to my biological parents. The strange patterns engraved on it were something I had never been able to understand. Samuel took the pendant and examined it closely by the firelight. His expression grew heavier by the second. These patterns, he traced the engraving with his fingertip. I've seen them in the ancient scrolls of our tribal history. What is it? This is, he looked up, a shock I had never seen before in his golden eyes. This is the crest of the moon goddess bloodline. The moon goddess bloodline? The oldest bloodline in wolf mythology. Samuel's voice grew tight. Legend has it that 1,000 years ago, the purest and most noble bloodline existed, known as the Children of the Moon. It was a bloodline that even wolf kings had to bow to. He paused. And according to the legends, the birth of a child of the moon is never bound by gender. He looked at me, enunciating clearly. Male or female, anyone inheriting the moon goddess bloodline will present as an omega, a being purer and more exalted than any other omega. My mind buzzed. Are you saying, Carlyle? Samuel gripped my hands, his voice trembling. If this silver pendant is real, then you aren't some monster that shouldn't exist. You are the most noble bloodline in this world. Your status is higher than even mine as Wolf King. I stared at him blankly, unable to speak for a long time. 16 years. For 16 years, I thought I was a monster, a stain that shouldn't exist, a curse that could be burned alive at any moment. I had shrunk myself into a shadow, living carefully, terrified of anyone discovering my true self. But now he was telling me I wasn't a monster. I was a child of the moon. That's impossible, I murmured. I'm just a convent orphan. An orphan? Samuel's gaze sharpened. Carlyle, have you ever thought about it? If you truly are a descendant of the moon goddess bloodline, why would you be abandoned at a convent? Who could bear to abandon such a noble child? I couldn't speak. Someone must be hiding something behind this. Samuel stood up, pacing the room. The moon goddess bloodline was severed thousands of years ago. Everyone thought it was completely extinct. But if you are real, he stopped abruptly, turning to look at me. Carlyle, he said, I am going to find out your true origins, not just to make the tribe accept you, but because it is what you deserve. You deserve to know exactly who you are. Samuel dispatched his most trusted spies, following the trail of my silver pendant. And during this time, our relationship quietly began to change. I was no longer the prisoner locked in the tower, waiting for death. Under the guise of researching an outsider prisoner, Samuel granted me limited freedom within the royal court. With his tacit approval, I could visit the library, the training grounds, and corners where there were no outsiders. I began to relearn how to be a person with a name. Samuel taught me to read the tribal history, to recognize the ancient crests, and to identify the meanings behind different pheromones. He even secretly taught me swordplay. He said a future wolf queen could not lack the ability to protect themselves. Future wolf queen. Every time I heard those words, a bittersweet flutter would ripple through my heart. It felt like a dream too distant, too extravagant. But when Samuel said it, he spoke as if stating an inevitable fact. One night, Mahid arrived early again. This time, Samuel came faster than usual. He practically crashed through the door, immediately wrapping me in a tight embrace and soothing me with his pheromones. But this time, pheromones alone weren't enough to suppress it. My body was scorching. I clung to his neck, burying my face in the crook of his shoulder, instinctively biting at his Adam's apple. Carlyle, he panted heavily. Don't do this. Mark me, I begged hoarsely. Samuel, I can't take it anymore. Mark me. He was trembling all over. His fangs rested against my neck, right on the marking spot. I could feel the tips of his teeth already piercing the skin slightly. I could feel that he was only a hair's breadth away from losing control. No, he used all his strength to push me away just an inch, resting his forehead against mine, panting ruggedly. "Carlyle, listen to me. Not yet. Once I mark you, you'll carry my scent. The whole tribe will know by tomorrow. I'm not ready yet. I can't protect you." "I don't care," I cried out. "I'd rather burn at the stake than go on like this." "Samuel, do you have any idea that every time you stop, I feel like you don't even want me?" He suddenly grabbed my face. "I don't want you?" His eyes were bloodshot, the golden pupils churning with agonized flames. "Carlyle, I exercise restraint every single night. I press my fangs against your neck over and over again. I want to bite down every single time. It takes every ounce of my sanity to pull back. Do you think this is easy for me?" His voice choked. "I don't mark you, not because I don't want you," he said word by word. "It's because I want you too much. I want you to live. I want you to live in the light, without fear, and become my wolf queen. I don't want to mark you in the shadows, only to watch you die for it." I stared at him, stunned. "Wait for me just a little longer." He pulled me into his arms, his voice full of exhaustion and pleading. "Just a little more time. I'm so close to finding out. Wait for me, okay?" I leaned into his embrace, my face covered in tears. That night, once again, he hovered on the edge of the mark for the entire night. On the day the spies brought back news, Samuel's expression was heavier than I had ever seen it. "Carlyle." He called me into his study and dismissed everyone. "I found out about your origins." My heart leaped into my throat. "You are indeed a descendant of the moon goddess bloodline," he said, "and not just an ordinary descendant." From an ancient scroll of parchment, he pulled out a yellowed portrait. In the portrait were a young man and woman. The man had eyes exactly like mine, and the woman wore a necklace with the exact same patterns as my silver pendant. "These are your parents," Samuel said. 20 years ago, they were the most noble moon goddess bloodline in the north. Your father was the direct heir of the children of the moon. Your mother hailed from an ancient family of high priests. "Where?" My voice shook. "Where are they now?" Samuel was silent for a moment. "They're dead," he said. "In the year you were born." My heart sank. "The moon goddess bloodline is too noble." Samuel gripped my hands. "So noble that every tribe wanted to claim it. Every schemer wanted to exploit it. In the year you were born, several tribes joined forces and besieged your family. To protect you, your parents entrusted you to a loyal servant, having him smuggle you out and hide you in a border convent." "That silver pendant," I murmured, "was so I could find my identity later on." "Yes," Samuel nodded. "Before they died, your parents placed the last hope of the moon goddess bloodline on you." Holding the portrait, my tears fell onto it drop by drop. 16 years. I always thought I was an abandoned child, despised and casually tossed away by my parents. But it turned out they had hidden me to protect me. They traded their lives for mine. "Carlyle." Samuel hugged me gently. "You are not a monster. You never were. You are a child of the moon, the most exalted bloodline in this land. What you deserve is everyone bowing before you, not the stake." I buried my face in his chest and wept loudly. It was the first time in 16 years I had cried so thoroughly. When I finished, Samuel cupped my face and looked at me earnestly. "Now," he said, his golden eyes blazing with unprecedented light, "I have my reason. I can openly declare your identity before the entire tribe. A descendant of the moon goddess bloodline, an existence more noble than the Wolf King. No law can sentence a child of the moon to death. He leaned down and pressed a solemn kiss to my forehead. Carlyle, he said, are you ready? It's time to reintroduce you to the world. But things were never that simple. On the eve of Samuel preparing to announce my origins, the tribes that had besieged my family all those years ago caught wind of it. They sent envoys bearing threats. Wolf King, the envoys spoke arrogantly in the grand hall. We hear you are hiding a so-called moon goddess bloodline male Omega. I advise you to hand him over. That is tainted blood, a curse. Keeping him will only bring disaster to your tribe. Samuel sat on his high throne, his golden eyes cold as ice. Hand him over, he said lightly. On what grounds? On the grounds of tribal law. The envoy sneered. A male Omega is a capital offense. This is a rule that has lasted 1,000 years. If the Wolf King harbors him, you violate the law. We have the right to unite the other tribes and launch a crusade against the Silvermane tribe. A commotion rippled through the elders in the hall. I knew this was the scheme of those tribes. They had killed my parents back then, and now they feared that I, the heir to that bloodline, would rise and seek revenge. They wanted to use the blade of tribal law to eradicate me completely before I could gain a foothold. Samuel stood up. Tribal law. He walked down from the throne, step by step. You want to talk about tribal law with me? He walked up to the envoy, looking down at him commendingly. Then I will talk about tribal law with you. Samuel's voice carried an oppressive, overwhelming majesty. Tribal law does stipulate that a male Omega is a capital offense. But tribal law also decrees that the moon goddess bloodline is supreme, transcending all other laws. The envoy's expression changed. What did you say? I said. Samuel paused between every word. Carlyle is not an ordinary male Omega. He is a child of the moon, the direct heir to the moon goddess bloodline. According to the most ancient laws, the status of a child of the moon is above the Wolf King. Impossible! The envoy cried out. The moon goddess bloodline died out long ago. Did it? Samuel turned his head, looking toward me where I stood on the side of the hall. Carlyle, come here. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. I no longer hunched my shoulders. I no longer lowered my head. For the first time, I straightened my spine and walked into everyone's line of sight with the bearing of a child of the moon. Show them, Samuel whispered to me. I nodded. I had stopped taking the suppressants. I let the moon goddess pheromones, suppressed for 16 years, release completely and unreservedly for the first time. It was a clear, noble scent that even Samuel's cedar aura couldn't suppress. Like moonlight, like the purest wind across a snow-capped peak, like a primal summons etched deep within the blood of all wolf kind. The entire grand hall fell instantly silent. I saw the elders, who had been causing a commotion moments ago, widen their eyes in awe. I saw the arrogant envoy turn deathly pale. His legs went soft, and he nearly dropped to his knees. The pheromones of the moon goddess bloodline made all lesser wolves instinctively submit. This was a hierarchy carved into their very blood, unchanged for 1,000 years. Now, Samuel's voice echoed in the dead silent hall. Who dares say he doesn't deserve to exist? The envoy fled with his tail between his legs. But I knew it wasn't over. The tribes that had eradicated my family would not let this rest. They will come, I told Samuel that night. They dared to kill my parents back then. They'll dare to come kill me now. Let them come. Samuel held me, his tone calm but brimming with killing intent. "Carlyle, your parents died isolated and without support to protect you, but you are different. You have me behind you, and the entire Silvermane tribe. But if those tribes unite, their strength can't be underestimated." "Then let them witness." Cold light flashed in Samuel's golden eyes. "What happens when you provoke a child of the moon and the Silvermane Wolf King?" The war came faster than we expected. 3 days later, those tribes indeed formed an alliance. Under the banner of the Wolf King harboring tainted blood and violating tribal law, they launched a crusade against the Silvermane tribe. But they miscalculated. They thought the Silvermane tribe would betray and abandon Samuel because of my tainted blood. What they didn't expect was that Samuel had completely secured his tribe the moment he announced my identity. The nobility of the moon goddess bloodline was an instinct etched into every wolf. When those elders personally experienced my pheromones, when they instinctively submitted to the summons of the child of the moon, they could never again see me as tainted blood. More importantly, the prestige Samuel had built over 3 years of conquest was not hollow. The war lasted only 7 days. The Silvermane cavalry, led by Samuel, crushed their enemies with unstoppable force. And I, as the heir to the moon goddess bloodline, went to the battlefield myself. I didn't hide behind Samuel. I used the swordplay he taught me. I used the pheromones in my blood, and I stood right by his side. When the leaders of those tribes were brought to their knees before me, I looked at them and spoke calmly. 20 years ago, you killed my parents, I said. Today, I should seek my vengeance. They trembled violently, awaiting my sentence. But I won't, I said. Samuel gave me a look of surprise. My parents traded their lives for mine. I looked at those leaders. If I use your blood to honor their sacrifice, how am I any different from you when you slaughtered them? I turned away and walked back to Samuel's side. I don't want revenge, I told him. What I want is a world where no one is ever burned at the stake for not deserving to exist ever again. Samuel looked at me, his golden eyes overflowing with pride and tender heartache. He gripped my hand. All right, he said. Then we will build that world together. After the war ended, Samuel abolished the 1,000-year-old law persecuting male omegas. In the name of the moon goddess heir, and with the authority of the Silvermane Wolf King, witnessed by all tribes, he rewrote the laws of the wolf kind. From then on, regardless of gender or bloodline, every omega had the right to live openly and honorably. And I, Carlyle, child of the moon, the last heir of the moon goddess bloodline, could finally stand in the sunlight without fear. On the day of the coronation, all the tribes of the north were present. I stood on the altar wearing silver-white ceremonial robes embroidered with the moon goddess crest. Samuel stood before me in his royal robes, his golden eyes brimming with the tenderness I had read countless times, yet which still made my heart race. Carlyle, he took my hands, witnessed by everyone. For 16 years, you hid yourself like a shadow, living in fear. I nodded, my eyes growing hot. From today on, he said, you will never have to hide again. You are the child of the moon, my wolf queen, and the most noble and cherished person in all this land. He leaned down. This time, his fangs rested against the back of my neck, right on the marking spot. This time, there was no hesitation, no restraint. No, wait a little longer. Carlyle, he whispers softly against my ear. I've waited for this moment for far too long. I smiled, offering the back of my neck to him completely. Bite, I said. His fangs, finally, witnessed by the entire world, bit gently yet firmly into the back of my neck. The moment our pheromones fused, I felt a complete, unprecedented sense of wholeness. Cedar and rust, intertwined with moonlight and clear wind, bound together inextricably. It was an eternal mark. It was a bond belonging to us that no one in this world could ever question again. A tidal wave of cheers erupted from below the altar. Those who had once said, "I shouldn't exist," now all bowed their heads. And I, standing beside Samuel, held tightly in his embrace, felt it truly for the very first time. I belonged here. I belonged to him. I could finally, openly, and honorably live. The night after the coronation, Samuel held me as we lay on the bed where we had hovered on the edge of a mark countless times before. "Do you remember what you looked like the first time you stepped into my hall?" He chuckled softly, his fingers threading through my hair. "I remember." I buried my face in his chest. I hunched my shoulders, pretended to be a worthless beta, thinking I could fool everyone. "You fooled everyone," he said. "Except me." "Why you?" I looked up at him. "How did you know with just one sniff?" He leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead. "I already told you." His golden eyes were impossibly gentle in the moonlight. "Your scent was as if you were born specifically for me." "You've said that line how many times now?" I blushed. "Then I'll say it again." He hugged me tighter. "Carlyle, from the very first second you stepped through those doors, I knew you were my tribulation, and also my destiny." I leaned against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat. Outside the window, it had started snowing again. The exact same snow as when I was first dragged into this royal court. Only back then, I was a monster awaiting death, an existence that shouldn't be. Now, I was the child of the moon, the wolf queen, the one held in the palm of this man's hand and cherished forever. "Samuel," I called out. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for not sending me to the gallows that day." He let out a low laugh. "Fool." He kissed the top of my head. "How could I ever bear to?" "You wanted to drag me into your bed all along, didn't you?" I teased him with a smile. "I did," he admitted frankly, a sly glint in his golden eyes. "I wanted to. From the very first second I smelled your scent." I laughed and swatted his chest. He took the opportunity to pull me deep into his embrace, placing a gentle kiss right over the mark on the back of my neck that belonged to him. "My little stray kitten," he said. "Now you are entirely mine." I closed my eyes, a peaceful smile spreading across my face in his warm embrace. "Yours." Outside, the snow fell until dawn, but I knew that from now on, no matter how cold the snow was, I would never again be shivering alone in a corner. Because I had a home. I had him. My name is Samuel Van Helsing. Before meeting Carlyle, I thought my life would only be lived for power. I presented as an alpha at 12, lost my father at 15, and ascended the throne on a path of blood at 23. I annexed 7 northern tribes in 3 years and sent everyone who questioned my bloodline to the grave. The tribe called me cold-blooded. They said the look in my eyes was like looking at a piece of meat to be discarded. They were right. Before I met Carlyle, that was exactly what I was like. That day, a destitute boy stumbled into my grand hall. Everyone thought he was a worthless beta, and everyone was waiting for me to order his execution. But I smelled his scent. It was a sweet, cloying pheromone that was deliberately suppressed, yet stubbornly seeped out anyway. A scent I had never encountered in my 26 years of life. My instincts screamed frantically in that instant. The tribe's high priest had once said that in my life, I would meet someone who shouldn't exist, and that person would be my tribulation, and also my destiny. I thought it was nonsense until I smelled his scent. I knew it was him, but he was a male Omega. In our world, that was a capital offense. I should have followed tribal law and sent him to the gallows, but I couldn't do it. I dragged him into the tower next to my bedchamber. I told myself it was just because he was useful, just because I was curious about his origins. I lied to myself for a long time, until that night when his suppressants failed. In his heat, he curled up trembling in the corner of the bed, buried his face in my chest, and burrowed into my arms like a frightened little stray kitten. Only then did I admit it. I was done for. I, the cold-blooded wolf king who lived only for power, had fallen head over heels for a destitute boy. Every night after that was pure agony. I held him in my arms, my fangs resting against the back of his neck. I wanted to bite down every single time and mark him as mine forever. But I stopped every single time, because I knew that if I bit down, he would die. Tribal law did not permit a male Omega to live, much less allow the Wolf King to mate with him. If I marked him, the whole tribe would smell my scent on him, and the stake would be waiting for him. I would rather suffer through the agony than watch him die. So I restrained myself. Time and time again, I pulled my fangs back from his neck. He didn't understand. He thought I didn't want him. He cried in his heat, begging me to mark him, saying he would rather burn at the stake than go on like that. He didn't know that every time I stopped, it was 10,000 times more agonizing than biting down. I swore then that I would find a way. I had to make the world accept him. I had to let him live openly in the light and become my wolf queen, even if I had to tear up that 1,000-year-old law with my own 2 hands. Later, I discovered his origins. He wasn't a monster. He was a child of the moon, the last heir of the moon goddess bloodline, the most noble existence in this land. In that moment, I felt both joy and heartache. Joy, because I finally had a reason to let him live openly. Heartache, because such a noble child had been forced to hide for 16 years, reducing himself to a shadow terrified of the light. I swore I would give back everything he had lost. I would make everyone who ever said he shouldn't exist bow down, and I did. On the day of the coronation, witnessed by everyone, I took his hand. I watched him, dressed in silver-white ceremonial robes, standing tall on the altar as the child of the moon. The boy who once hunched his shoulders and timidly said, "I don't know anything," could finally stand in the sunlight without fear. I leaned down and pressed my fangs to the back of his neck. This time, no hesitation, no restraint. I had waited for this moment for far too long. When my fangs pierced his scent gland, when our pheromones thoroughly fused, I felt a wholeness I had never known before. Cedar and rust, intertwined with moonlight and clear wind, bound together inextricably. It was an eternal mark. It was a bond belonging to us that no one in this world could ever take away. Carlyle leaned into my embrace and smiled at me. "Thank you for not sending me to the gallows that day. Fool, how could I ever bear to? From the very first second I smelled your scent, I knew. You are the one and only destiny that I will spend my entire life protecting.